The princess didn't hesitate until she realized his true identity. The chains on his wrists are not the loudest thing in the room. The silence is. 500 courtiers stand inside the hall of final judgment, and not one of them is breathing incorrectly. I have walked this corridor before. I was 7 years old and my father's hand was enormous around mine, and I watched him do exactly what I am about to do. Afterward, he told me it did not feel like anything in particular. He looked me in the eye when he said it, with the full composed authority of a king who has decided what his daughter needs to believe. He was good at that, deciding, quietly, what was true. He lied. I know that now. You do not spend 20 years perfecting a face that looks like nothing, feels like anything, unless something, at some point, felt like a great deal. My tutors prepared me for this room in the way my tutors prepared me for everything, systematically, without sentiment, and with a thoroughness that was meant to leave no room for surprise. I studied the ceremony at age 6. I memorized the liturgy at age 8. I practiced the walk at age 10, back and forth across the stone floor of a training room built to the hall's exact measurements, while my rhetoric instructor called out the names of noble houses, and I was required to maintain my pace and expression regardless of what name was called. Even the ones I was not supposed to know the history of. Especially those. I have been ready for this room for a long time. What my tutors did not prepare me for was this particular morning, with a particular prisoner at the far end of the hall and a particular door in my memory that keeps trying to open. What they also did not prepare me for, and what I am not going to let them know they missed, is the specific quality of the silence in this room, when the person walking toward the dais has buried their father 3 days ago. It is a different quality from the silence I practiced against. Thicker, closer, the kind of silence that has an opinion about you. I let it have its opinion. I keep walking. His robes are the dark blue of deep water, deepening toward black at the hem, chosen with precision for this occasion. His expression is the color of a wall. He watches me cross the threshold with the patient attention of a man counting things. Steps, heartbeats, the specific geometry of whether a princess who stood at her father's funeral 3 days ago is going to hold herself together long enough to reach the dais. I hold together. I always hold together. It is possibly the only thing I do that requires no effort whatsoever. 30 steps between me and the dais. I know this number the way I know my own name. I counted them when I was 7, pressed against my father's side, watching the blade descend, and I have not unlearned that number since. The prisoner is human. This is the part the council framed as straightforward. The execution of a human soldier, they said, would answer every whisper that has been circling my name this past year. The ones about the war years, about my loyalties, about the time I spent in territories that no official document discusses without careful redaction. A princess who holds a blade without hesitation, they said, is a princess whose allegiance is not in question. 20 steps. I do not look at the nobles. I know their positions without using my eyes. Lord Vayan on the right side of the hall, wearing the dark green his house puts on whenever it expects to gain something from an occasion. He has been watching me the way a man watches a structure he is looking for a specific crack in, ever since the morning of my father's funeral. Lady Mira beside him, who has committed publicly to nothing since my father's illness became terminal, and who has been the most expensive neutral party in this court for the past 14 days. Beyond them, 60-odd others whose names I memorized as a child and whose allegiances I mapped somewhat later, arranged around the hall like pieces on a strategy board before anyone has moved. None of them are what I am focusing on right now. 15 steps. The prisoner has not moved. This is the thing that catches in the wrong part of my mind. Most condemned persons, of any species, in my limited but specific experience of this hall, make adjustments in the final minutes. They shift weight from knee to knee. They breathe with too much intention. Behind the blindfold, their eyes track sound, building a map of the room they can hear but cannot see. The body does this automatically, involuntarily, as a last act of orientation, as though knowing where you are somehow matters when there is no longer a where to go. He is not doing any of it. He kneels with the stillness of a man who has already run his calculations, reached his conclusion, and found the conclusion acceptable. No ongoing negotiation with the situation. No final arguments made to the self. The math is complete, and he is at rest inside it. I do not know why this pulls at something in me. I have seen condemned people who were genuinely unafraid before. Soldiers, mostly. The kind of person who has spent long enough in proximity to death that the relationship changes. What those people have in common is a specific relationship with time. They live in the immediate present, not the projected future, because they have learned through practice not to invest in futures that may not arrive. Their stillness is earned, and it is recognizable. What he has is something else. His stillness is not the earned calm of a person who has stopped fearing death. It is the stillness of a person who has brought something to this room, something with a purpose, and the purpose is not finished yet. I set the observation aside and keep walking. 10 steps. Orvin begins the liturgy. The words are formal Threen, the dialect that has not been anyone's spoken language for 4 centuries and belongs now exclusively to ceremony and prayer and this room. I let them pass through the air around me the way my tutors trained me. Present in the body, removed in the mind. Not because the words are without meaning, because if I give the meaning room right now, the 39 of them will take twice the time, and everyone watching will know why. 7 steps. I study the prisoner the way I study everything that matters. Systematically, in the order that extracts the most information from the fewest observations. He is large by human standards, wider through the shoulders than most Threen males, which is not uncommon for the species, but is still notable when you are standing close. His hands, restrained behind him, are not straining against the bindings. His posture does not belong to someone who is afraid. More than that, it does not belong to someone who is working at appearing unafraid. I have spent enough years in this court to know the difference between those two things. Real composure is a different thing from performed composure. The tells are small, but they are always present. A jaw held too deliberately still. Hands curled in specific ways. The way a person breathes when they are controlling the rate rather than simply breathing. None of those tells are present. 5 steps. The scar. From this angle, just below the edge of the blindfold, I can see it clearly. A pale ridge of healed tissue running from the corner of his mouth to near his ear. Old damage. The skin around it is smooth and long set. The geometry of the scar is precise, in a way that accidents are not. This is the mark of a blade used deliberately, by someone communicating something, not simply fighting for position. A statement written in scar tissue. I have seen that scar before. The recognition lands bare and clean, without a location attached to it, without a context, without a time of day. The way you recognize a piece of music before you can name the piece or remember where you first heard it. The knowing arrives before everything else. I set it aside. I close the door in my memory that this recognition is trying to open. I take the next step. 3 steps. Orvin's liturgy lifts toward the final verse. The language shifts here to something older still. Pre-Empire Threen, the syllables spoken in this space before the space had walls, before the Empire existed, before the room was anything but a place where judgments were made, and people stood beside them. I learned the response words at 6 years old, before I fully understood their weight, precisely so that their weight would never interfere with my delivery of them when the moment came. I say the Threen, for I carry this weight. I take the blade from the altar cloth where Orvin extends it. The blade is not heavy. Everyone who has not held it believes it will be. My tutors addressed that expectation early and thoroughly. They had me hold the blade for hours across many days, so that when I held it in this moment, the weight of the object would not be the thing that undid me. It has never undone me. Its weight is exactly what it has always been. 2 steps. The prisoner's jaw is set in the particular way of a person who has made a final decision and is sitting inside it without apology. 1 step. I raise the blade. The hall is so quiet that the candle flames are audible. 38 candles burning in 9 sconces, their flames held steady by the draft management of a room built 5 centuries ago by engineers who understood that ceremony requires stillness in everything, including air. And the prisoner, the still, calculation-finished, acceptance-settled prisoner, exhales. Once, through his nose. Not the sharp release of shock, not the rattling breath of fear. The long, controlled exhale of a man who has been carrying something for a very long time and has just decided, in this specific moment, that this is far enough to carry it. That the carrying is done. That sound reaches me like a splinter finding a seam in wood. I stand with the blade raised and the liturgy complete, and 500 people waiting, and the candles burning with their 38 steady flames. Something is wrong. I cannot name it. I have never been particularly skilled at naming the things that live in the corridor of my memory that I choose not to walk down. The war years. The diplomatic arrangement that was not what it was presented as. The things I survived in ways that do not appear in any record I have ever been shown. My tutors did not teach me to name those things. They taught me to set them down at the station like bags I no longer needed and walk away. So I walk away. Every morning for 5 years, I walk away. Except I am standing completely still. The blade has not moved. Something has slipped sideways inside the room, and I am the only person who can feel it. Everyone else sees a princess who has paused. I know I am not pausing. I am being pulled, very quietly, through a door I have not opened in 5 years, by a sound and a scar and a voice that spoke one word in the wrong dialect at the wrong moment, in a hall full of people who are watching me and waiting and have no idea what they are actually watching. The candles burn, 38 flames, all steady. Not a question, a reminder. I breathe in slowly. I set my shoulders. I find the face I have been constructing since I was 7 years old in this room, and I wear it the way I always wear it, like armor fitted so early in the day that by the time anyone sees me it looks like skin. The scar catches the candlelight. The door in my memory opens. Just a crack. A crack is enough. The ceremony has a name for this moment. The identification. It is the final formality before the ceremony reaches its conclusion. The removal of the blindfold so that the condemned may see the face of whoever carries the authority of the throne, and so that the throne may confirm, before the assembled court, that the correct person is kneeling before the correct blade. In the early empire, the function was genuinely procedural. Records from that period show disputes, errors, cases of wrongful detention in political chaos. The identification was a check, a last visible confirmation of correct procedure. In the modern court, it is theater, but theater with weight behind it. Everything in this hall has weight. The centuries have loaded the room until even the air remembers something. Orvin crosses from the altar. His sandals make almost no sound on the ancient stone. The hall, already taut with held silence, pulls itself tighter, the way a bowstring does when one last finger of pressure is applied. I have not lowered the blade. I have not moved it further. I am holding it at exactly the position where the problem began, which is not something I have ever done in rehearsal or in any previous occasion, and I can feel Vayan on the right wall of the room, measuring the duration of this pause with the precision of a man adding evidence to a case he began building before he walked in tonight. Orvin reaches the prisoner. He unties the blindfold with the practiced, unhurried hands of a man who has performed this action many times in this room and has learned not to let the human weight of the moment slow him down. The cloth falls. The human blinks against the candlelight. Once, twice. His eyes adjust with a speed that Threen eyes do not match, and then his gaze finds the middle distance, and I am looking at a face I have seen before. I am completely certain of this. I cannot reach the memory. The corridor in my mind where it lives has been shut for 5 years, and I have been very good at keeping it shut. But the recognition is in my body before it reaches my thoughts, sitting in my chest like a stone that has been there long enough to feel structural. He is older than the records the council provided suggested, or perhaps it is not age. It is a specific quality I have observed before in people who have been through a sustained attrition of a particular kind. Not the attrition of illness or poverty. the attrition of sustained decision-making under conditions where every decision carried a real price. That kind of living marks the face differently than time does. It settles something permanently behind the eyes. His eyes are a light gray, almost colorless, which is uncommon for a human. I have dealt with enough of the species to know that their eye coloring tends toward warmth, browns and greens and the various blues that are never quite the blue they appear in artwork. His eyes carry none of that warmth. They are the color of winter water, clear and very steady, and they have settled on a fixed point in the middle distance with the quality of someone who has chosen that point deliberately. The scar along his jaw is fully visible now, pale healed tissue, precise and deliberate, catching the candlelight. Orvin returns to the altar. The hall waits. I look at the scar and the crack in the door of my memory widens, and what pushes through is not a scene, it is fragments. Firelight, not the controlled flame of ceremony but something larger and less managed. Smoke moving low and fast along a floor. A sound I have spent 5 years failing to precisely identify, something large and structural failing all at once. The smell of burned electronics that I have encountered exactly once in my life and cannot encounter in any context without my lungs tightening in response. And a voice. A human voice. Speaking Threen. Not formal Threen, not court dialect. The Threen of the border settlements, the stripped-down, consonant-heavy speech of the outer provinces, and the contested sector stations, and the people who live in the margins, where both our kinds have been pressing against each other for 60 years. A human voice speaking border Threen, repeating one word. The door shuts again. It always shuts here. It has shut at this precise point in the memory every single time I have gotten close to it for 5 years, and I have never managed to stop it. It shuts because that is what I built it to do. At 22 years old, coming back from the outer sectors on a medical transport with smoke still in my lungs and no name for the person who carried me, I made a deliberate choice. The choice was to put the whole thing in a room with a heavy door and leave it there, not out of weakness, out of practicality. A princess who spends the years of her preparation searching for an anonymous soldier in sealed coalition records is a princess making the wrong investment. The debt I felt was real, and I felt it. I have always felt it. That specific weight of a life preserved by one person who chose to go back when all the systems said do not go back. But the door was more useful to me than the debt. I kept it shut for 5 years. And now the man who put the debt in my chest is kneeling in my hall, and his voice just opened the door completely, and the debt is exactly where I left it, heavy as the day I first understood what I owed. But I am here. The blade is in my hand. Vayan is on the right wall, and the duration of this pause is now long enough that I cannot pretend it is simply part of the ceremony. I make the only viable calculation. State your name, I say. My voice lands exactly where I send it. Flat and clean and carrying precisely as far as the hall's acoustics are built to take a voice. Nothing in it gives anything away. There is no protocol requiring me to ask this at this point in the ceremony. The prisoner's name was already read into the formal record by Orvin before the liturgy began. Orvin's almost invisible stillness at the altar tells me he is aware of this. The prisoner's almost invisible pause tells me he is aware of it too. Then he speaks. Calderon, Border Threen. The door blows completely open, and I am 22 years old, and the facility is burning, and the smoke has settled at head height, and I cannot feel my legs because the inhalation moved faster than I could manage, and someone's arms are around me, and a voice is repeating one word in Border Threen over and over, and that word is the Threen word for I have you. I have you. I have you. I have you. The memory is not a full scene. It never is, when it breaks through. It comes in pieces. The texture of smoke at a specific temperature. The vibration of something structural failing somewhere beneath the floor. The precise way that arms feel when the person carrying them is moving fast but keeping the movement controlled. The way a voice that belongs to a stranger sounds when it is the only voice left in a burning room and it is saying one word, over and over, in a dialect it has no institutional reason to know. I have spent 5 years choosing not to know whose voice that was. It was the only available choice. The face was hidden by smoke. The records were hidden by someone who knew what they were removing. And I was 22 years old and alive and back in Threen space, and the official position was that the matter was closed. So I closed it. I closed it the way you close a door when something behind it is too large to look at directly. You press your back against it. You put all your weight on it. You keep walking. My hand is not shaking. I need to be precise about this because it is the only completely stable fact in the current moment. My hand is not shaking. Nothing visible has changed in my posture, or my face, or the position of the blade. But inside the architecture of my chest, something has shifted. Not collapsed, not broken, just moved, several degrees from where it has been sitting since the year I came back from that assignment and decided, very deliberately, that it was over and would remain over. State your rank, I say. Calderon looks at me with those winter water eyes, and his expression carries something I cannot fully read, which is exceptional enough to make note of. I am good at reading expressions. My tutors built that skill in me from an early age because a person who reads a room correctly is a person who survives the room. His expression has layers that I do not have current vocabulary to map. Former Staff Sergeant, he says, Human Coalition Defense Division, Sector 7 Operations. A pause too precise to be accidental. Retired. The word retired lands with a weight it should not carry. The weight of something that happened to a person and was recorded afterward as a choice they made. I look at the scar. I look at his eyes. And this time I do not let the door shut. I was 22. The diplomatic arrangement was framed as an honor, a recognition of my readiness, a trust extended by my father, a chance to represent the Threen Dominion at a border summit that was supposed to hold the ceasefire in place. The facility was designated neutral ground. The distance from active fleet positions was supposed to mean something. The word supposed is doing considerable work in that sentence. On the third night of the ceasefire, the engagement arrived at the facility. 31 people inside. I was the only Threen. 20 steps from the exit my legs stopped. The smoke inhalation was faster than I could manage, and my body withdrew its cooperation in the way bodies do when they are prioritizing survival over what you are telling them to do. I know the number of steps because I counted every one I managed to take, and because counting was the only thing I had to do while the smoke took the air away and the floor came up to meet me. 20 steps. Then down. Someone picked me up. I felt the shape of a person, wide through the shoulders, arms that moved with the practiced certainty of someone who has carried weight in difficult conditions before, moving low and fast to stay below the worst of the smoke. And I heard a voice. One word, repeated. In the border Threen that has no ceremony in it, no formality, just the direct and simple word that means, I have you. 22 more steps to the door. I counted those 2, from inside someone else's arms. 12 across the courtyard, then the emergency transport, then unconscious. When I woke on the Threen medical transport, there was no record of who had carried me. No name, no documentation. The absence was noted in my father's intelligence files, but not the person. His team spent 6 months looking and found a deliberate hole in the coalition records where the information should have been, made by someone who understood exactly what they were removing. I eventually decided it did not matter. The way you decide things that cost too much to keep undecided. I lower the blade. Not all the way. 40 degrees from raised. One deliberate movement. Not a tremor, not a hesitation, a decision, made and visible. The collective intake of breath from 500 Threen courtiers is something I will not forget for the rest of my life. It is not a sound exactly. It is the absence of one. 500 people pulling the same breath inward at the same moment and holding it and not letting it go. I do not look at Vayan. I do not need to. I can feel the specific quality of his attention from across the hall. Not surprise exactly, because Vayan has been in this court long enough that very little genuinely surprises him. But the particular sharpening that happens when a man who has been waiting for a crack in a structure finds one he did not expect in the location he found it. He was looking for weakness in my composure, in my hands, in the duration of the walk. He was watching for the particular kind of collapse that comes from grief, compounded by inexperience, compounded by public pressure. He was not watching for this. A deliberate lowering is not a collapse. A deliberate lowering means a decision was made, and a decision made by the Crown in the Hall of Final Judgment, even a decision no one in this room can currently explain, carries a weight that a collapse would not. Vayan is recalculating. I know this because I know Vayan. I lower my gaze to Calderon's face, a warning delivered in the vocabulary of a man who has been waiting for leverage and believes this is it. I look at Calderon's face. He is looking at mine. One of the unreadable layers in his expression has shifted. I think, though I would not yet stake anything important on the interpretation, that the shifted layer is surprise. He is surprised. A man who calculated all of this, who knelt here with the math already finished, who was prepared for whatever came next. He is surprised that I stopped, which means he genuinely expected that I would not stop, which means he walked into this hall expecting to let me do it. The fury that moves through me is clean and immediate and exactly the right tool for this specific moment. I reach for it the way I always reach for it, the familiar thing, the steady thing, the thing that has never once failed to hold me upright when the ground beneath me moves. Orvin, I say, Your Highness. Adjourn the ceremony. The room breaks, not noisily. We are not a people who break noisily. We break by becoming more electric, more still, more sharply present, the particular quality of a sky in the minutes before a storm it has been building toward all day finally arrives. Vayan is on his feet. This ceremony was ordered by the Council of Eight, the authority of the Council in matters of... The Council advises the throne, I say. The throne is standing in front of you. Sit down, Vayan. He does not sit, but he stops speaking, because 500 people are watching, and even Vayan understands the cost of pressing past a certain point in a room that has not yet decided which direction to fall. I hand the blade back to Orvin. He takes it without any change in his expression. I look at Cal one more time. The surprise in his face is the most interesting thing I have seen in 4 days, which is a remarkable statement given what the last 4 days have contained. Bring him to the lower chambers, I say to Sev, my guard captain, who has been standing 4 steps behind me, with the fixed focus of a man who has decided that whatever is happening tonight is above his authority to question and exactly within his authority to manage. Remove the restraints from his hands. Orvin, beginning. Your Highness, the protocol for a prisoner who has not. He will not run, I say. I say it with the same certainty I use for everything I say in this hall, not because I know every particular of Calderon's intentions, but because a man who walked into the Hall of Final Judgment with the math already finished and the result already accepted is not a man who is going to run from an unlocked room. He has somewhere specific to be. He simply has not told me where yet. I walk back down the corridor. 30 steps. I count them the same way I always have. Behind me the hall begins to breathe again, loudly and incorrectly, in the particular rhythm of 500 people who have just witnessed something they do not yet have a name for. I have a name for it. I have just made the most expensive decision of my reign, and my reign is 4 days old. The lower chambers smell of old stone and lamp oil, which is the smell of everything in this palace that predates the renovation period. The east corridor is the one farthest from the council wing. I chose it deliberately when I first learned the geography of this palace as a child, the same way I deliberately learned every geography I was placed inside, identifying the paths that are not watched with the same attention as the central ones. Sev brings Calderon through the door, and I am already at the small table. The lamp here burns steadier than the candles in the hall. It casts yellow light without any drama to it. Cal sits across from me. Sev takes his position at the door. Neither of us speaks for a moment. The lamp holds between us like a third presence in the room. You knew, I say. He does not ask what I mean. Yes, he says. From the beginning, from when they brought you in. From before they brought me in, he says, I presented myself for capture. 3 weeks ago, in the Southern Corridor Sector checkpoint, I walked up to the gate without weapons. Without any weapons. With one thing, he says. A piece of war-era alloy with your father's seal on it. The kind of object that gets a human detained at any Threen checkpoint without discussion. Which is what happened. 3 weeks earlier than I expected, actually. I had anticipated the palace bureaucracy taking longer to route me here. I sit with this for a moment. You walked into a checkpoint with a dead king's seal. I say, to be brought to this palace, to be placed in an execution ceremony, so that I would see your face. Yes, he says. And if I had not recognized you? The pause is small, and it tells me more than anything he could say. Then I would have been wrong about the calculation, he says. Just that. The complete absence of self-preservation drama in the delivery. He says it the way you say I would have been wrong about the route. A fact, not a tragedy, something to be noted and moved past. I feel the fury reconstitute itself, fresh and very useful. You were going to let me do it, I say. In that hall. If the scar had not caught the candlelight at that particular angle, at that particular moment, you were prepared to let me finish the ceremony. I accepted that as a possible outcome, he says. What is the difference between accepting a possible outcome and simply not caring whether you live or die? He looks at the lamp for a moment. The difference is what you do with the time before it becomes certain, he says. I spent 3 weeks in your prison working through what I was going to say to you. A man who does not care does not prepare. I look at him. The gray eyes are steady and direct, and carrying those layers I still cannot fully read. Where did you get my father's seal? I say. A woman gave it to me, he says. A woman who worked in your outer diplomatic corps for 12 years. She retired 18 months ago. Her name. Senna, he says. I know that name the way I know the layout of every room I have ever spent significant time in. Senna served my father faithfully across 3 foreign postings and 12 years, stationed consistently in the contested sector regions, the border zones, the places where the margins between our two kinds are thin enough to see through. She retired quietly, without ceremony, the kind of retirement that is arranged rather than chosen. Senna, who said nothing to me about any of this, found the human soldier who carried me out of a burning building and sent him a message. She did not tell me, I say. She believed it should come from me directly, he says, not from her account of events. She was right, I say, and I hear the surprise in my own voice when it comes out. I sit with that for a moment. Senna, who spent 12 years in careful, quiet service in the margins of contested space, finding this man and judging correctly that the most useful thing she could do was to send him here and say nothing to me about it. She trusted that I would recognize him when I saw him. She trusted that the recognition would produce something more than what a prepared briefing could have produced. She was right. A briefing would have given me facts. The hall gave me something else. Something that sat in my body before it reached my thinking mind. Something that had been lodged in the space behind a closed door for 5 years, waiting for exactly this kind of irresistible pressure to push it through. The lamp holds steady. Tell me about Vatar, I say. The version that was sealed. He tells me. It takes close to 3 hours. I learn, across those 3 hours, that Calderon spent 12 years in Sector 7 operations, the division of the human coalition military that manages contested space. The border regions where Threen sovereignty and human expansion have been pressing against each other for 60 years, with the slow, grinding certainty of geological processes. By any objective measure, he was exceptional at this work. His operational record, in the portions that are accessible, is the record of someone who made correct decisions consistently under conditions that punish incorrect ones. Then came the facility. The standing order for coalition personnel inside a compromised neutral zone was clear and had been clear for many years. Extract your assigned assets, meaning your personnel and your designated equipment, and leave the area. Do not engage with Threen nationals. Do not, under any circumstances, attempt to recover a Threen royal during an active engagement. The political implications were too significant. The risk of the action being characterized as a hostage seizure was too high, and the protocol was not open to interpretation. He violated every part of it. He went back into the facility after he had already brought his assigned personnel out. He found me 20 steps from the exit with my legs no longer cooperating. He carried me across those 20 steps and the 12 across the courtyard and placed me on the Threen medical transport. He returned to his extraction point. He deleted the sections of the facility logs that would have shown his movements and his unauthorized re-entry. He filed a complete operational report listing all 30 human personnel as recovered. He made no mention of the Threen national he had also recovered, because mentioning it required explaining it, and explaining it required defending it, and defending it made it official. Someone found out anyway. The tribunal was held in a sealed room 6 months later. The reprimand was issued, the reduction in rank was processed and applied, and then the complete record was sealed with a thoroughness that my father's intelligence teams spent 6 months attempting to penetrate, and could not. The honorable discharge came afterward, official on paper. The unofficial instruction to disappear was delivered in a meeting that also does not appear in any record. He disappeared. 4 years in the outer survey sectors, the deep rim work that no one particularly seeks out, mapping resource fields, filing reports that are mostly read by automated systems. He stayed away from anything that touched Threen space. He built a life in the margins between official existence and something quieter, which is, I am beginning to understand, not entirely unfamiliar ground for him. During those 4 years, he did not stop paying attention. He maintained contact with the people who had been pushed out of official positions the same way he had been pushed out. Not through any secure channel that could be traced back through coalition infrastructure, but through the informal networks that exist in the outer sectors, the kind of communication that flows through trading stations and survey outposts and the civilian vessels that move between the contested margins. People who had been discharged or quietly removed, or simply found the institutional structure increasingly impossible to work within. People who made the kind of calls that Cal Darren made, at different moments, in different circumstances, and paid versions of the same price. He listened. He remembered. He kept the list current. And when Senna's message reached him, he had 12 people on that list whose trust was earned, whose skills were real, and whose freedom of movement was no longer constrained by Coalition Command, because Coalition Command had formally stopped acknowledging their existence. Then Senna sent the message. Your own command gave you the scar, I say, when he finishes. It is not a question. He is quiet for a moment. A tribunal produces a formal record, he says. An unofficial conclusion sometimes produces something less formal. Someone communicated their position on your choices. Yes. After which you relocated. After which I relocated, he says, with the precise and deliberate distinction of a man who chooses his words carefully and has thought about this particular word before. I sit back. Why now? I say. My father died 10 days ago. You were at that checkpoint 3 weeks ago. You were already in motion before he was gone. Something shifts in his expression. One of those unreadable layers. I heard he was ill, he says. Approximately 18 months ago. His illness was not public. Certain information moves in ways that are not public, he says. Senna. Yes. She told you the throne was going to be contested and the new reign would need to demonstrate strength early. She told me your father was dying and your court was positioning itself, he says. I did the rest of the calculation myself. I look at him directly. What do you want from this? I say. Not the strategic framing. What do you actually want? He looks at the lamp for a moment. Your father was dying and your court was sharpening its arguments, and you were going to have to prove yourself to a room full of people who have been preparing for this succession for longer than you have, he says. I have skills that are no longer welcome in human space. I have knowledge of the contested sectors that this court does not currently access through any other channel. And I owe a debt to the only person in this galaxy I actually owe anything to, and I am not someone who leaves debts sitting. Silence. You came to help me, I say. If you will have it. A human soldier, officially disavowed by his own command, has come to the Threne Palace to offer his services to the new princess. Yes. That is either the most useful thing that has happened in the first 4 days of this reign, or the most catastrophic. Probably both, he says. It is the first thing he has said that sounds like a person rather than an operational report. Not the border Threne formality, not the mission log diction, not the controlled stillness. This sounds like an actual human being making an honest admission. Something in my chest settles into a different position. I do not name what it is. I am too busy. Sev, I say. Your Highness. From the door. Current situation in the council wing. Sev's expression does not change, which means it is exactly as bad as I expected. Lord Vayan has called an emergency session of the Council of Eight. Lady Mira has not committed to attending, which indicates she is currently receiving offers from multiple directions. The High Celebrant has returned to the temple wing and has not made a public statement. Orvin staying quiet. That is Orvin doing what he has done for 4 successive reigns, waiting for the terrain to clarify before choosing which ground to stand on. The guard, I say. Yours, Sev says, with the clean certainty of a man who has made a decision and does not revisit it. I stand. Cal Darren, I say. He looks up at me. You will stay in this chamber. You will not move, and you will not give Vayan anything additional to work with tonight. Understood. When I return, I need everything you know about the Coalition's current intelligence posture in this sector, your external contacts, and everything Senna told you about the internal alignment of this court. I can give you all of that. Good. I move toward the door. I stop. I do not turn around. You said you repeated the word. In the facility, when you were carrying me. A pause. Yes, he says. Who taught you Border Threne? A longer pause. A woman in the outer settlements, he says. I was on a survey assignment there for 6 months, before the war. She taught me enough to get by. And you remembered it. I remember everything I learn in places that mattered to me, he says. I stand at the door with my hand on the frame for 1 moment. Stay here, I say. And I go to face the Council of Eight. The walk from the lower chambers to the council wing takes 9 minutes through the east corridor. I count the steps the way I count everything in this palace, out of habit, out of the training that turned counting into a reflex before I was old enough to understand what the reflex was for. There is a specific number of steps from every room in this building to every other room, and I know most of them, and they anchor me the way the counting of steps in the hall always anchored me. The council wing at night is not the council wing during the day. In the day, it is inhabited by clerks and advisors, and the particular administrative energy of a large bureaucratic structure moving through its routine. At night, it is the kind of empty that holds the echo of everything that has happened in it, all the decisions made in the rooms on either side of the corridor, all the arguments and compromises and carefully worded agreements that constitute 60 years of this court's recent history. I walk through it, and I build my case, and I do not look uncertain, and I do not feel uncertain, and by the time I reach the council chamber door, I have the words, in exactly the right order. Vayan has 13 arguments prepared. I can see them lined up behind his eyes before he opens his mouth. He is a man who prepares the way other people breathe, constantly, automatically, without interruption. He has been building cases against me since I was 12 years old, and he recognized that I was not going to be the kind of princess who defers to counsel on small matters, which meant I was never going to defer on the large ones either. The council chamber is cold. They did not expect me to arrive this quickly. The standard expectation, based on precedent and on how my father operated, and on the general assumption that a 4-day-old reign has not found its footing, was that I would retreat, gather advisors, compose a position, and appear when I had something carefully prepared. I appear before they have finished being surprised. The ceremony was interrupted, Vayan says, before I have fully crossed the threshold. The council requires an explanation. I take my seat at the head of the table. 6 of the 8 council members are present. Lady Mira is not. Neither is Kale, the youngest member, who holds his position because of my father's appointment and whose direction I have not yet had time to fully evaluate. The council is owed explanations it has formally requested through proper procedure, I say. I will provide one regardless. Calderon is a person of active intelligence value. Executing him tonight would have destroyed information this court cannot currently access through any other available channel. Vayan blinks. Once. What information, says High Advisor Pret, whose years in this building exceed those of the current wing's construction, and who has never in his long career said anything without measuring each word of it first. Sector 7 operations, I say. Coalition military movements in the contested border zones. The current status of the disavowed operations division that Human Coalition Command does not officially acknowledge, but which this court has been attempting to map for 3 years, without adequate results. I let that settle. Verification will take 48 hours. At that point, I will deliver a complete briefing to the full council. This is partially true. Calderon does carry this information. What I am not saying is the larger part of what he carries, which is not a thing this room is currently equipped to understand in the way I need them to understand it. I need time to build the frame before I show them the picture. Vayan looks at me across the table. He does not believe me. He knows I know he does not believe me. We sit with that shared knowledge between us for a long moment. 48 hours, he says. 48 hours, I confirm. The prisoner remains in secure conditions. The prisoner remains in the lower chambers under my guard captain's direct supervision, I say, which is technically accurate and carefully non-specific about the current state of the prisoner's restraints. 9 minutes later, I leave the chamber and spend those 9 minutes walking through corridors and cataloging what I know. Vayan is already in motion. Those 13 arguments were too polished, too immediately available. He had a plan before the hall, and the hall only changed which entrance point of the plan he uses first. He will not respect the 48-hour boundary. He will move inside it. The question is not whether he moves. The question is whether I have positioned myself to receive his move on ground of my choosing rather than his. Lady Mira is still negotiating. That means she has not been won by either side, which means she is still available. Mira has survived 3 reigns in this court by committing to nothing until the moment that commitment would be most valuable. What she is looking for is the position that will cost her the least and gain her the most, and right now she has not yet found it. Whoever makes the more compelling case in the next 36 hours has a real chance of winning her. Pret is observing. Pret is always observing. His waiting is different from Orvin's. Orvin waits for certainty, while Pret waits for the person who walks in and demonstrates that they understand the full weight of what they are walking into. He has been waiting for that person for a long time. I have always suspected he was waiting to see whether I was her. Orvin will remain in the temple wing until the decision is effectively made. That is not betrayal. That is 4 reigns of survival strategy. I cannot count on him, but I can count on his absence, which is almost as useful. I go back to the lower chambers. Cal has not moved from the table. He has filled the writing tablet Sev gave him with 12 pages of notes, a combination of formal Threen script and a human shorthand I cannot read. Vayan moves inside 48 hours, I say, sitting down. Tell me what we do with the time we actually have. He tells me. Over the next 2 hours I learn the following about what Calderon has been building across the 4 years since he disappeared from official existence. He has contacts. 12 people, former coalition operatives and border settlement workers and survey sector personnel who were removed from official positions for the same fundamental reason he was. They made the right choice instead of the authorized one, and paid for it with their careers and their records and their place inside the institutional structure. He has maintained those connections across 4 years. He has a network of people who are not answerable to coalition command, and who carry knowledge of the contested sectors that official diplomatic channels cannot access. What makes this network different from any intelligence asset this court has previously cultivated is something I need a moment to fully understand when he explains it. The people on his list are not working against the coalition. They are not dissident operatives running a covert agenda. They are, most of them, living ordinary lives in the outer sectors, doing work that has nothing to do with the contested margins or the political tensions that remove them from official service. What they share is not an ideology or an organized opposition. What they share is a demonstrated willingness to act correctly when the institution they serve will not, and the particular credibility that comes from having paid the full price for that willingness. Coalition command cannot pressure them. Their leverage over these people was severed when they discharged them. There is no promotion to threaten, no record to hold over them, no institutional standing to revoke. The thing that makes them useful as contacts to this throne is precisely the thing that makes them invisible to the system that removed them. They trust you, I say. Most of them, he says. Enough to come here if I asked. If you asked through the right channel, he says. With the right framing. We don't have time for the right framing, I say. I know, he says, which is why we use them as leverage before we use them as a resource. We show the council that they exist. We show the council that access to them is available through this throne and through no other mechanism currently available to the Threne Dominion. I look at him. You're proposing we walk into whatever session Vayan calls, I say. I'm proposing we walk into it first, he says, before he builds the entire frame around what happened in the hall tonight, before he gets to name what it was. And in that session, you tell them yourself what you did at Vathar. Yes, he says. And I use it to propose something the council did not expect to be offered. Yes, he says. I sit with this for a moment. It will still cost me politically, I say. Yes, he says. But the cost of being framed by Vayan is higher than the cost of choosing your own frame first. I look at him across the table. A human soldier who has been living outside official existence for 4 years, sitting in a lamplit room in a Threne palace, doing political strategy for a throne that is 4 days old. Get some rest, I say. Tomorrow is going to be long. I do not sleep. I sit in the royal library for the hours between the lower chambers and dawn, reading nothing in particular, thinking about the shape of what is coming. The library is the room in this palace I have always found the most honest. It does not perform at you the way the hall does not carry the specific weight of ceremony. It is just a room with old things in it, and a lamp, and the particular quiet of a space that has held other people's concentration for a long time and absorbed some of it. I think about my father. He built this throne for me in the sense that he spent 30 years governing in a way that left it standing and functional and mine to inherit. He also built things into it that he did not tell me about, and the fact that those things turn out to be useful does not entirely resolve my feeling about the not telling. Senna, whose quiet service he kept, whose careful judgment he trusted enough to let her operate without oversight in the outer sectors, who found the right person and sent him here at the right time. My father knew about Senna. He understood what she was capable of, and he chose to leave her to it, without briefing me, without preparing me. Maybe he trusted that the right moment would do what a briefing could not. Maybe he simply ran out of time. Both are possible. He was a man who ran out of time very suddenly, and then would not acknowledge it for 3 months while the infection spread, which is the most my father thing he ever did, and which I cannot think about yet without the particular anger that comes from grief that has not found its proper shape. I set it aside. The library holds it for me for a while, the way it holds everything. At 4 in the morning I make tea and wait for Sev. Not 48, 31, which tells me everything I already knew about his relationship with deadlines he did not set himself, and confirms that the plan he had before the hall was further along than he showed me in the council chamber. Sev delivers the news at dawn on the second morning. Vayan has invited the full council, the high clergy, the senior noble houses, and every military commander currently stationed in the capital. It is not formally a tribunal. It has the structure of one. The charge, unspoken because filing it formally requires procedures Vayan cannot fully control, is the suggestion that the Crown Princess demonstrated insufficient independence from foreign interests, that her termination of the execution ceremony raises questions about her fitness for independent rule, and that a Council of Regency should be installed until those questions are formally evaluated. Evaluated. He will use that word. I think about that word while Sev briefs me, and I drink the tea I made at 4 in the morning, because sleep was not something available to me that night. 23 years of being evaluated, by tutors who reported to my father, by generals who reported to the council, by every courtier who looked at me and sorted me into either asset or problem depending on their current position, by the court itself, across every formal occasion and informal gathering and diplomatic function I have attended since I was old enough to be placed in a room and watched. The tea is very good. This is a small and stable fact, and I hold it while I finish Sev's briefing. 2 hours until the session begins? I say. Yes, Your Highness. Good. I go to the lower chambers. Cal is awake and has been for some time. The writing tablet now has 14 pages filled. He looks up when I enter and does not ask me what the news is, because he already knows from my face what the news is. 31 hours, I say. About what I expected, he says. Cal, we go now, I say. We walk in before he has set every piece where he wants it. Yes, he says. We walk to the council chamber together, through the corridors I know by memory, through the one wing where I have to set the pace because he does not yet know the route. The passage to the main chamber hall, the antechamber where the guard captain on duty does an almost invisible double-take at the sight of Calderon walking unconstrained beside me, and then, to his considerable credit, says nothing and steps aside. The doors of the council chamber open. The reaction when I enter with Cal beside me is something I will carry as a clear memory for the rest of my life. The assembled nobles and clergy and commanders go completely silent for 3 full seconds. Then the room breaks in the controlled, precise, weaponized way of Threen courtiers who have been trained since childhood to express outrage through stillness and sharpness rather than noise. Vayan is at the council table on his feet. He looks at Cal. He looks at me. His 13 arguments reorganize themselves into a new order behind his eyes. Your Highness, he says, very carefully, the presence of the prisoner in a full council session is without precedent and is not my prerogative as the throne, I say. Sit down, Vayan. He does not sit. This session was called because this council has significant concerns about. I know what the session was called for, I say. I also know it was called 31 hours ahead of the timeline I provided, which tells me the quality of those concerns is exactly what I suspected they were. I take the throne seat at the head of the room. You want to question my allegiance because I halted an execution. Let us discuss that, in full, with the person at the center of the matter present in this room. Silence of the sharpest available variety. Vayan looks at Cal again. High Advisor Pret, from the right, measuring every syllable as always. Who precisely is this human, beyond the name given in the ceremony? Tell them, I say to Cal. He stands beside my seat, and he looks at the assembled council and clergy and commanders of the Threen Dominion, and he tells them. He tells them his name and his rank and his division. He tells them about Sector 7 operations and what 12 years in contested space looks like from the inside, the kind of detail that no diplomatic briefing ever contains, because diplomatic briefings describe conditions from above, and 12 years on the ground produces a different kind of knowledge entirely. He tells them about the facility and the standing orders and the 30 human personnel assigned to his extraction parameters and the 1 Threen national who was not. He tells them about 20 steps from the door. He tells them what he did. He tells them what his command did in response. He tells them what the tribunal concluded and what the discharge document said and what the unofficial instruction conveyed. The room is completely quiet throughout. No one interrupts. I watch the faces of the council members, and what I see there is something I have not often seen in this room. They are listening, not the performed listening of courtiers managing their expressions while they compose their responses. The actual listening of people who are receiving information they have no framework for yet, and are building the framework in real time. Vayan is the exception. He is not building a framework. He is looking for the point of attack. I can see him examining Cal's account from multiple angles, the way a person examines a material for the specific seam that will yield to pressure. What he is finding, and what I can see him finding, is that there is no seam. Cal Darren is not presenting an argument. He is presenting a sequence of events that happened in a specific order, each one following from the last, with the clean causality of things that actually occurred. There is no rhetorical structure to dismantle. There are only facts arranged in time. Pret is the most still I have ever seen him in 7 years of council sessions, which for a man who is never still means he is working at something very seriously indeed. Lady Mira, who arrived at some point in the last few minutes and is standing near the east wall rather than seated at the table, is watching Cal with an expression I have not seen on her face before. Not the silk-wrapped knife, something older. Something that has been sitting inside her for some time and does not often come to the surface. Vayan's arguments are no longer in their prepared order. You violated coalition standing orders, he says to Cal, when the account is finished, for a Threen national who was not on your operational list. Yes, Cal says. Your own command discharged you for it. Yes. And you came here, Vayan says, after 4 years living outside official existence, to offer your services to the Crown Princess of the Threen Dominion. Yes. A long look. Then Vayan turns his gaze to me. This is what you characterized as intelligence value, he says. This is the foundation of something considerably more significant than an intelligence asset, I say. I stand up. What Cal Darren did at Vatar is not in any official record on either side of that engagement, I say. The coalition buried it because a soldier who chose an enemy national over his standing orders is a story their institutional structure cannot afford to make official. We buried it because acknowledging that I was carried out of that building by a human soldier would have required acknowledging that the diplomatic arrangement which placed me inside that building had failed, and that someone on our side decided a princess inside an enemy facility was a more useful political position than a daughter kept safe at home. The room absorbs this. I look around the table and I take my time doing it. We have spent 60 years in formal diplomatic engagement with human coalition representatives, I say. We have read their policy documents and sat across from their officials and analyzed their military strategies and their territorial expansion patterns and their resource extraction rates. And in 60 years, we have fundamentally failed to understand the most important thing about them. Which is, Pret says, and it is not rhetorical, that the best of them will choose the right action over the authorized action, I say, and they will carry that choice across years of living outside official existence, and they will walk into a Threen checkpoint with a dead king's seal, and they will kneel in the hall of final judgment, and they will accept whatever comes next, because the debt exists, and they do not put down debts. Unquote. The hall is the quietest it has been since I walked in. This court has been trying to understand humans for 60 years, I say. We have never tried understanding the ones their own institutions discarded. We have never considered that the people their command structure found too inconvenient to keep are precisely the people whose reliability this throne can actually trust, because their reliability is no longer institutional, it is personal. Personal reliability does not change when the political wind changes. It does not renegotiate when the strategic situation shifts. It is the kind that held across 4 years and a 3-week stay in a Threen prison and a raised blade in this palace's most formal hall. Lady Mira, from the east wall, what exactly are you proposing? A direct channel, I say, not to Coalition Command, to the people Coalition Command has disavowed, the operatives and border workers and sector personnel who were removed because they kept insisting on doing what the situation required, rather than what the institution permitted. People whose reliability is now proven in the most expensive way possible. Their own side paid them in discharge papers and sealed records and the instruction to disappear, and they are still here. Vayan opens his mouth. Before you characterize this as a network of individuals who were removed by their own government, I say, I would ask you to be precise about what you are actually saying. You are saying that a person who went back into a burning building to carry an allied national out, at the cost of their career and their record and their place inside any official structure, is someone whose judgment and reliability this court should dismiss. I look directly at him. Make that argument in front of the full council, Vayan. I will listen. He does not make it. He is quiet for a long moment, and in that quiet I can see him recalculating. Not retreating, recalculating. There is a difference. Vayan does not retreat. He finds new angles. Right now the new angle is not yet visible to him, and he is smart enough not to produce one that is half-formed. Pret speaks. The proposal as described, he says, in the measured way he says everything, would require this throne to maintain a channel that no official diplomatic protocol currently accounts for. The legal framework for interaction with persons who are not recognized by their government of origin is not clearly established. Then we establish it, I say. This court has amended its diplomatic framework 17 times in the last 60 years to accommodate changes in the political landscape. This is the 18th change, and it is the first one in 60 years that is entirely within this throne's unilateral authority to implement, because none of it requires coalition agreement. They have already removed these people from their jurisdiction. We are simply acknowledging that removal in a direction they did not intend. Fort. The silence that follows this has a different texture from the silence that preceded it. This is the silence of people reconsidering their position, not the silence of people who have been silenced. Lady Mira, from the East Wall, what are you proposing? A formal liaison arrangement, recognized by the throne, operating outside the standard diplomatic treaty framework, I say. A direct channel to the network Calderon has maintained in the outer sectors. These are not foreign government representatives. They are individuals who carry no official standing with any current government, which means they fall entirely within the throne's discretion rather than the council's treaty authority. The arrangement would give this court intelligence access to the contested sectors that no official channel currently provides, and that no official channel will ever provide, because official channels require the coalition to cooperate, and the coalition has every incentive not to. Hera looks at me, then she looks at Cal, then she looks back at me. And what does he receive in return, she says. Formal recognition, I say, from this throne, the acknowledgement that what he did at Vaethar was the correct action, on record, in this palace, in front of these witnesses. That is what he came for, not payment, not title, not position, the acknowledgement. The room is quiet. Mira looks at Cal again. Is that accurate? She says to him directly. He looks at her, those gray eyes steady and direct. Yes, he says. Something in Mira's face settles. The calculation she has been running for 14 days behind those careful neutral eyes reaches a conclusion I can see arriving in her expression before she opens her mouth. Then I support the arrangement, she says, with quarterly intelligence briefings to the full council. Agreed, I say. Vayan tries once more. He argues the council's treaty authority, the legal framework, the precedent risk, the political signal it sends to coalition command. He argues it well. He is genuinely good at his work, and the arguments he makes are real arguments, not fabrications. They deserve to be heard, and they deserve to be answered, and I answer each of them in the order he raises them, in front of the full room, clearly and without dismissal. At the end of it, he has no arguments left that he is willing to say aloud. Pret speaks for the second time. He says, to the table, rather than to anyone specifically, that a throne which constructs new frameworks rather than being constrained by old ones is doing exactly what thrones exist to do. He says it the way Pret says everything important, to no one and to everyone, with the particular authority of a man who has outlasted 4 reigns by being consistently correct about the things that matter. Kale, who has been silent in the corner for the entire session, meets my eyes when it is over. He gives me a single nod. I file this and move on. There will be time to understand Kale later. Vayan does not win. He does not lose either. Not permanently. He is not a man who loses permanently. He will rebuild and find new angles, and return to this from a different direction. That is what Vayan does. It is, in its own way, what this court actually needs from him. A person who never stops pushing keeps the institution from becoming comfortable with things it should not be comfortable with. But today he does not win. Lady Mira commits her support, not unconditionally, because it never is with Mira, but formally and in front of witnesses, which is worth considerably more than any private assurance. Pret says nothing for the remainder of the session that is negative. From Pret, this is the equivalent of a standing endorsement. The Regency proposal does not come to a vote. When the chamber has emptied and the last set of footsteps has faded into the outer corridor, I stand at the head of the table, and Cal stands 4 steps to my left, and Sev stands at the door, and the room holds its cold and particular quiet. Vayan will come back to this, Cal says. Within the month, I say. Probably less. Almost certainly less. I look at the writing tablet he brought from the lower chambers. The names on those 14 pages. He turns to the first page and reads from it. Lena Ward, he says. Survey Sector 12. Former Coalition intelligence analyst. Removed from her position 3 years ago for reasons that the official record describes as restructuring and that the actual record would describe differently. He turns the page. Owen Price. Deep Border Operative. His removal is a longer story, but the pattern underneath it is identical. He turns through several more pages. All of them made the same fundamental choice I made, at different times, in different places, under different circumstances. All of them paid the same kind of price. And they trust you. Most of them, he says. Enough of them. Enough to come here if the ask comes the right way. Yes, he says, but the ask matters. They were not pushed out for being disloyal. They were pushed out for being right when the institution needed them to be wrong. The ask cannot come as a formal request for intelligence service. It has to come as a recognition from someone who understands what they chose and what it cost them. If you frame it that way, they will come. If you frame it as a crown requiring information from available assets, they will not. You can make the introduction in the right frame. Yes, he says. I sit with this. The network he has built across 4 years in the outer sectors is unlike any intelligence resource this court has previously held. The value is not in the number of people. 12 is small. The value is in the quality of the reliability, which has been tested in the most expensive way available. Every person on that list had a career, a record, an official identity, a place inside an institutional structure that gave their work meaning, and they all chose, independently, under different circumstances, to do the correct thing when the institution needed them not to. They paid for that choice with everything the institution had the power to take, and they are still who they were when they made the choice. That cannot be undone. No new policy, no new command structure, no diplomatic pressure can reverse what that choice revealed about who those people are. I look at the list, 14 pages of people whose reliability was made personal and permanent by the cost their own institutions made them pay for it. 14 pages of exactly the kind of contact this throne has never had before and cannot access through any official diplomatic channel. I need an office set up for you, I say, in the communication wing, the arrays that are not routed through the council section. I noticed them when they brought me through, he says. Of course you did. Something in his expression shifts again. One layer below a smile, with the same warmth. One condition, he says. State it. I work for the throne directly, he says. Not the council, not the clergy, not any faction currently assembling itself around this succession. The throne. You. Agreed, I say, without any pause, because it was already the only version of this arrangement I was prepared to accept. He nods once. We walk through the palace together, through the corridors I know by memory, and through one I have to show him. The passage to the communication wing that bypasses the council section, the one my father had built into the original renovation plans without explaining to anyone why. My father, who knew about Calderon, I am certain of this now. Senna served him for 12 years. She sent Cal a message when my father's illness became serious. My father died without saying a word to me about any of it, and I am going to be quietly furious about that for a long time. I hold it the way I hold the things that cannot be resolved immediately, carefully, with both hands, not letting it spill into the space where I need to work clearly. What I cannot determine yet is whether my father's silence was a failure of courage or a gift of the particular kind that only becomes visible from the other side of it. A prepared princess would have walked into the hall knowing who was kneeling. She would have lowered the blade with knowledge, not recognition, and knowledge is not the same as recognition. Knowledge arrives in the mind, recognition arrives in the body first, passes through the chest, and reaches the mind already carrying everything it needs to carry. Senna understood this. Whether my father did is a question I will never be able to answer from him directly, so I will have to answer it the way I answer most things, by working forward with what I have. Outside the walls of this palace, the galaxy is about to receive news. Within days, the Coalition will know what happened in the Hall of Final Judgment. They will know a Threne princess stopped an execution. They will know she brought the prisoner into a council session. They will build theories about what it means. Most of those theories will be wrong, but some of them will find the piece of it that actually matters. The piece that says a human soldier made a choice, at Vatar that no institution authorized and no record preserved. The piece that says a princess looked at the scar along his jaw 5 years later, in a hall full of people expecting a very different outcome, and recognized what she was looking at. The piece that says something has changed, something small enough to dismiss from a distance and large enough to matter up close. The kind of change that, when you trace it back to where it started, begins in a burning building, 20 steps from a door, with one word spoken in Border Threne. I have you. We reach the communication wing. Calderon looks at the arrays with the focused attention of someone who is already thinking 3 moves ahead. I stand beside him and I look at the same arrays. They are older equipment than what the council wing uses. My father had this section built separately, wired through a different routing system, and never fully explained why. I understand now why. He understood long before I did that information has to move sometimes through channels the council cannot see. He built the mechanism. He just never told me what it was for. I am going to have to decide what to do with that. First contact, I say. Who do you open with? Lena Ward, he says. She has the most current intelligence on Sector 12 movements, and she is the most cautious of the 12, which means, if she comes in, the others will follow. She sets the pace. And if she does not come in, she will, he says. She has been waiting for a reason to. He says it with the same calm he says everything. Not certainty exactly, more the settled acknowledgement of a person who has spent 4 years paying close attention to people and knows from that attention what they need to hear before they will move. Good. So am I. We have a great deal of work to do. And this throne is only 4 days old.